You have to be asleep if you haven't heard the latest, greatest news.
And we are less than 5 minutes away from watching history transpire.
Both the oldest and youngest person ever to travel to space will be on this flight.
A cancer survivor will be one of the first private citizens in the country to rocket to outer space.
What we can confirm, without a doubt, is our equipment is on the surface of the moon, and we are transmitting.
A successful splashdown for NASA's Artemis 1 moon mission.
NASA just announced the Artemis 2 crew that will be heading to the moon.
We want to see humans on Mars.
One of the most dynamic challenges of space exploration is human health. Humanity is at the dawn of a new space age. NASA is going back to the moon, has its sights set on Mars, and private companies are exponentially increasing the number of humans going to space. As of this video's recording, fewer than 700 people have gone to space, so the dataset is small, but we do know that space has a profound impact on human health. So what will happen to those astronauts going to the moon and to Mars and to the growing population of space explorers? To get a good idea, we must understand the 5 hazards of human spaceflight identified by NASA. Varying gravitational forces. Space radiation, a hostile and closed environment, distance from Earth, and isolation.
When you go into an environment that lacks gravity, your body's going to start adapting to that, which means it's going to stop investing in certain systems. We often, with spaceflight, expect people to be able to transition pretty quickly, and that's where you might get into some trouble.
Without gravity pulling the body down, fluids move from the lower body up to the head, leading to a feeling of full-headedness and a puffy face. After just a few days in microgravity, the body loses water, reducing total blood volume. The heart size and function are also reduced, leading to decreased aerobic capacity and orthostatic intolerance, meaning difficulty standing up when returning to an increase in gravity. Another effect is rapid muscle loss. Many of the muscles you use just by living on Earth don't get used due to the reduced gravity. And like many biological systems, over time, it's either use it or lose it. If space explorers don't work out regularly, muscular atrophy can appear as early as 5 days on board a spacecraft. So in order to counter the effects, astronauts must exercise for 2 hours a day while in zero gravity.
And a lot of this has to do with, we want to return you to Earth, and we want you capable when you return. So it's preparing for you for re-exposure to gravity. A lot of what we do is a lot of resource demand because we're trying to fight your adaptation to microgravity.
Just like muscles, load-bearing bones in the legs, hips, and spine don't have to work as hard since gravity isn't pressing down on them. This causes bone density to decrease. The result? The bones are more fragile, increasing the risk of bone fracture. The vestibular system, responsible for controlling your sense of balance and orientation, need time to adjust whenever experiencing a change in gravity. During those adjustment periods, some astronauts experience space motion sickness, leaving an astronaut to feel disoriented and nauseous and rather incapacitated. And that can make an astronaut more error-prone and unable to respond in an emergency. Because of all the deconditioning in microgravity, it can be hard to walk or even stand at first when returning to gravity. Currently, astronauts returning from a 6-month stay in the ISS are met with a team to help them adjust back to Earth's gravity. On a trip to Mars, astronauts will endure at least 6 months on their way there, only to then have to face the challenge of adapting to Mars gravity on their own. One of the most concerning physiological conditions associated with microgravity is vision loss, referred to as spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome, or SANS. It's characterized by a range of physical changes to the eye, which can lead to vision deficits. And the severity of SANS has been linked to the amount of time spent in space.
The question when you go to exploration type flight is, will it continually get worse?
On something like a Mars mission, abort and return is not an option. They have to complete the orbital mechanics in order to return to Earth.
Being millions of miles from the rest of humanity creates some physiological and logistical challenges. Resupplying crew with food or medicine just won't be as feasible as it is now. If something goes wrong with the crew or the spacecraft, well, that must be dealt with just using the resources they left Earth with. And currently, it's expected that the first missions to Mars will last around 900 days.
Let's just stop and pause and think about that. 900 days in a tin can with 3 other people that your boss picked out for you to go with.
Mental health is a big concern to scientists and space agencies across the world, especially since support from Earth will be limited. Astronauts will watch through the spacecraft window as Earth, the setting of all their memories with families, friends, shrinks in the distance as they travel deeper into space. Communications with people on Earth for support will have significant delays and adds another layer of isolation to an important mission. Behavioral challenges like depression, poor sleep, and mental instability can pose serious risks for an astronaut's performance, especially during long-duration missions. And in such a high-stakes environment, if just one crew member cannot perform the tasks required for a successful mission, well, that could jeopardize the safety of the mission and the lives of the entire crew. Now, space itself is not hospitable to life. To stay alive, humans need to constantly be inside pressurized and oxygen-filled environments. And they can't just get up and walk outside when they need a break or to clear their mind. Space explorers and astronauts live, work, and sleep in the same environment, meaning the spacecraft needs to be a good office, but also needs to be a good home. The bright, cool lighting of instruments, humming from fans, or of loud exercise bikes, the smell of cleaning supplies, or of a coworker's dinner could all make for a rather uncomfortable home. All these factors need to be considered when thinking about how to keep astronauts healthy and performing well.
And it's all about the food. That's real. In some ways, it's all about the food. If you don't plan well for the food, and the expedition doesn't go absolutely perfectly, there's going to be problems.
And being constrained in a closed environment also brings its own set of challenges.
Like living in a tin can, it's a closed system now. You just can't open the door and go outside. So what you have inside, the flora and fauna, the bacteria, the mold, the quality of the air, are you removing CO2, the water, how do we manage that?
A spacecraft can protect from much of the dangerous and hostile environment that space provides, but one hazard that is very challenging to protect from is space radiation. Considered one of the biggest unknowns in space health in terms of its long-term effects, space radiation is one of the most challenging hazards to defend against once you leave Earth's protective atmosphere. Galactic cosmic radiation consists of heavy ions traveling at close to the speed of light. These ions come racing from outside of our solar system, traversing light years before impacting a human to damaging amounts of energy. Space radiation can lead to inflammation, radiation sickness, brain conditions, and further cardiovascular deconditioning already caused by microgravity. Most notably, however, exposure to space radiation is associated with a lifetime risk of cancer, a risk that remains with astronauts long after returning home.
We can't shield from galactic cosmic rays. So then it's understanding what's the allowable amount of exposure we think is appropriate, and how do you negotiate that? Because the mission might demand more.
Now, these 5 hazards are not affecting the body one by one. All of their effects can interact and exacerbate each other, posing cascading physical, mental, and health challenges. And solving these space health challenges can help bridge the gap between our current space capabilities and that of our lunar, Martian, and beyond aspirations.
Things start changing when we start going back to the moon and we go further beyond, right? We got to deal with more radiation, we got to deal with distance from Earth, and probably a 6th hazard once we get there is exposure to lunar dust. That's another potential hazard once we get onto the surface.
So with all of the health challenges in human spaceflight, why do space agencies and space companies still want to explore? Well, as it's been put, because it is hard. Or in other words, if we can keep a human healthy, given all those constraints and conditions, with limited supplies and resources millions of miles away, imagine how many more people we can keep healthy here on Earth. If you are interested in learning more about the advancement of space health research, you can visit the Translational Research Institute for Space Health at bcm.edu/spacehealth and the NASA Human Research Program at nasa.gov/HRP.